Okay, good vacha, good yard to everybody. We're up to Yud Beis Amid Beis. Today's daf is Yud Gimel. We're up to Yud Beis Amid Beis. We saw the Mishnah said that any carbon you bring, shaloi l'shma, is kasha, el shaloi oil l'baylam l'shem chayvu, with the exception of a chatas and a pesach. If you shech a chatas shaloi l'shma, a pesach shaloi l'shma, then it would not be what? It would not be a good carbon. We saw the shita of Rebbe Eliezer who added asham. We have a sheet of Ben Azai who says not only chatos and pesach, but in addition oila. And we want to know the source for that. That even if a carbon oila was shaloi lishma, that it would be what? It would not. It would be out. So that's what we're looking to find out, according to Ben Azai. And that's exactly where we're up to now. On the two dots, Hoysef Ben Azai, Eloha oila, Hoysef Ben Azai, Eloha oila. Right, because he said that anything that is eaten, and since oil is not eaten, it's included in the chatas or asham shaloi l'shma. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, my time with the Ben Azai, oilahu asher reich nichoch laHashem, he lishma ksheira shaloi l'shma psula. So using the word oilahu, ishe reich laHashem, so oilahu, so who dafka is an oila and not as something, and not shaloi l'shma. For the Gemara, asham nami ksiv behu. Asham also, it says who in the pasuk. When it says that who by Asham is not speaking by one of the four avodas Adam. It's speaking about after you're burning the emurim. And we know if you didn't burn the emurim, the carbon would be kosher. So certainly, if you don't burn the emurim shalei l'shma, it will make a difference because burning the emurim itself is not ma'akiv the carbon. It says hu dechsiv. Says hainami la'achak taras emurim hu dechsiv. The pasuk that you just quoted, Olahu Isherech Nechoch Lashem, is speaking about after Aktaras Emurim. So how could you use it in one of the four avodas to tell me Shaloi Lishma? It would not be a good carbon. It would not be a good carbon. It says Gemara Trei Huksivi. There are two psukim. There are two who's. There's one in the one we just quoted, and another one in Shemos Chav Tes Yud Ches. Let me just see that. The one in Shemos. So you have an oilahu in this pasuk. So we always have two, even though once you have Taktaras Imum, we have a second one, and that second one tells me like Ben Azai that an oila shaloi lishma also would not be similar to a chatas, and a pesach it would not be a good carbon. So there's two by what? By oila. Says the Gemara Gabi Asham Nami Trei Huksivi. Asham also has two. And Asham, we know, according to Ben Azai, would be a good carbon if it's Shaloi Lishma. So now we're rejecting that approach, that it's a pasuk. We're going to say it, we're going to learn it out from a Kalvach Oimer that an Oila is not Oila L'Shem Bailam L'Shem Chayva, and it's not a good carbon. Ben Azai beKalvach Oimer Maisila. Uma Chatas, She'ena Kolol, a Chatas which is not totally burnt. Shachta Shaloi Lishma Psula, Oila Shehi Kolol Like Kol Shekain. An olah that's totally burnt, it's muhammad and the chatas. Like kol shekain, if you shecht it shaloi l'shma, it should not be kosher. Al yilias mal chatas shekein mechaperes, that a chatas is mechaper. Pesach yochiach. Pesach will disprove you. Why? Because Pesach is not mechaper, and nonetheless what? Nonetheless, it's not kosher. It's not kosher shaloi l'shma. Al yilias mal Pesach shekein zamana kavua on Yud Dalid, but the rest of the year it's what? It's not acceptable. Chatas techiach, that it's not kavua. So l'chayra between Pesach and Chatas, you should be able to learn that oila. The chazar adin loyri kizeri zeh, the chumrah of Chatas, it's not like the chumrah of Pesach and vice versa. Loyri zekri zeh tzadashava sheben. What's the tzadashava between Chatas and Pesach? Shehin kotshim, they're both kotshim. The shachtan shaloi l'shman pasel. Afani yevi oila, so too I will include ola. She kotshim, that it's kodesh. Ushachta shaloi lishma psula, and if you shecht it shaloi lishma, it'll be pasul. So tzad hashava, we're learning at oila from Pesach and Chatas. Fred Gemara malat tzad hashava shen sheyesh ben tzad karis. Both Pesach and Chatas have a tzad karis. you're bringing the chatas because you were over on something that would carry karis if you did it b'mezid. You ate chaylev. Again, chaylev is a chi of karis. Pesach, if you do not bring the carbon Pesach, you mevatel the asay. It's one of two mitzvahs asay that you get what you get karis for, that and mila. So they have it sad karis. Masha'en kain oila, which does not have it sad karis, maybe would shaloi l'shma be kosher. So in other words, we have a question on your limud, the leipen azai, you're learning from Pesach and chatas. I have a limud to tell me that you shouldn't. On that, the Gemara answers ben azai sad karis leiparach. He doesn't hold what that sad karis is a common denominator. Why, fellas? They're not similar, really. The reason why you bring a chatas is because you are over an aveira that carries the chi of kares. You know, you did an aveira. By the reason you chayiv kares by Pesach is because you didn't do a mitzvah. You mevatel and asay. One you over a lois asay, the other you mevatel and asay. So they're not similar. Memela, if it's not, you're not going to ask that kasha. So you have a good kal v'chomer to learn out oila from chatas and Pesach. Fred the Gemara, if that's a good limud, osham nami leisei, learn out osham from chatas and Pesach, and say just like the kachim and shaloi lishma is pasul, so to osham, which is kachim, and shaloi lishma is pasul. On that the Gemara says, malat sara shava shevehen sheken yeshna bitzibor kibiyachid. Pesach, guys, is a chatas. You have a carbon sibor by a chatas. Every Rosh Chodesh should bring a seir. Is a carbon sibor. The Pesach is considered a carbon sibor, even though it's an individual carbon. But since it's brought with bechefunya, it's brought with publicity. It's brought with bikinufia. It's brought a lot of people. It's considered a carbon sibor. Mashenkin osham is a unique carbon to an individual, and therefore you can't learn osham for the kal v'chomer of Pesach and chatas. But oily you could. So right now we're holding Leit ben Azai, it's a limud. Leit ben Azai, it's a limud from a kal v'chomer and Pesach and chatos, and you can't learn at Osham because Osham is not betzibur. V'ba Yisema, it's sad kares nami parach. You want to know the teretz? Sad kares also is the kasha. So meaning Pesach and chatos both have an union of kares. Mashen kein oila. So we're destroying the kal v'chomer now. We're destroying the kal v'chomer, right? And therefore, where does Ben Azai know that an oila is shaloi l'shma is not kosher? And Ben Azai gamala, he had a Messiah. He had a Messiah. I v'had the gamar afuna kal v'chomer. So if he had a Messiah, what do you mean it's a kal v'chomer? Shloyomer ela lechaded by talmidav. Rav Huna only said to go ahead and be mechaded the talmidim. You know, yes, kashas, yes, mechaded the talmidim. Like I have a grandson who's an expert in animals. I asked him, what's the polar bear's favorite penguin to eat? What's the polar bear's favorite penguin to eat? And he says, Sadi, it's not a good question. I said, why? Because polar bears live in the North Pole and penguins live in the South Pole. So it'll never happen. So that was a question, l'chadid boyas talmidim, right? Right? It's a question, because you were sitting there saying to yourself, Taka, which penguin do they eat? Right? And the answer is, it's l'chadid boyas talmidim. So who in what? Over here, who knows? They're saying that's the kal v'chomer to go ahead and pique the interest of the talmidim, but Ben Azai had a Messiah. Okay, we don't paskin like Ben Azai, we paskin like the Chacham of Mishnah. Only a chatas and a Pesach shaloi l'shma would be a pasal and loyal of Shem Chayva. Continuing along that same line, a new Mishnah. Ha Pesach ve'achatas. Now we're all familiar by now with the four avodas Adam, correct? The Shechita, the Kabbalah, the Elach, and the Zrika. We know that's mamish part of our DNA. So now, HaPesach ve'hachatas sheshochten shaloi l'shmon, kibul, or you makabel the dam shaloi l'shmon, or v'holach, you did halacha shaloi l'shmon, v'zorak, and you did Zrika shaloi l'shmon. Good. In all those cases, so now it's shayach shaloi l'shmon, or all four avodas. Oy l'shmonu shaloi l'shmon, or in one avoida. Guys, this might sound familiar because we had in the beginning of the Masechta, we wanted to go ahead and prove that Zevachim stam, it works, right? We want to say the difference between kachim, that stam is like the shmon versus get, that stam is shaloi l'shmon. We brought this in. So let's say let's just since shechita is the first one, you shechted it, and in the shechita of the Pesach, you had in mind lishma, and then you had in mind shaloi lishma. Good. So now, lishman or shaloi lishman, or shaloi lishman. First you had in mind shlamim, and then lishman Pesach. Psulim. Ketzad l'shman or shaloi l'shman. What would be an example of shaloi l'shman? L'shem Pesach, l'shem shlamim. First, b'shas one of the avoid shchita, you had in mind Pesach, and then you had, which is l'shma, and then in mitten derinin, as they say, you went ahead and you had shaloi l'shman, right? Okay, so the shman is first you had in mind the Pesach, and then simultaneously Shaloi Lishman you had in mind Shlamim, or vice versa. Shaloi Lishman is possible. That it's going to be possible. Shazevach nifsal, because the carbon can be possible. Bi'arba devarim, 4 ways. B'shchita, either in the shchita, ubekibol in the Kabbalah. Just keep this in mind because that's going to be our first sugya. Ubehiluch in the halacha. Ubizrika and in the zrika. Any one of the four avoidus. Okay, any one of the four avoidus, right? Any one of the four avoidus would go ahead and passel. Rabbi Shimon machshe behiluch. Rabbi Shimon says if you would have during the halacha a machshava shaloi lishma, it would not passel the carbon. Shahaya oimer, because he was of the opinion efshe shaloi b'shchita. It's not possible not to have shchita. Ushaloi b'kabbalah. It's not possible to have a Kabbalah, not Kabbalah. You have to be Kabbalah Adam, Ushlei Besrika. And that's, it's not, those are unavoidable. Aval Efsha B'loi Hilach, right? It's possible to go ahead, what? Without Hilach. Why? Because Shoichi B'tzadim Mizbeach. If you go ahead and shecht it at the side of the Mizbeach v'Zayrich, and you would go ahead, what? And you would do Srika at the side of the Mizbeach. So you did Shchita, you did a Kabbalah, now you do a Zrika. So you can do away with the Halacha. Says Rav Shimon, therefore, that the halacha is not a avodah chashuva enough that what? To passel if I had the machshava of shaloi lishma. That it's not enough that if I have the machshava of shaloi lishma to passel. Guys, good? Okay, so again, we saw the Mishnah, the din the theme of the first parak of this Masechta, which is shchita shaloi lishma. Right? We said that it's possible in the four avodas. And even if you had the mind initially the shchita lishma, you can mess it up. Even if you conclude with the shchita lishma, it's messed up. We have Rabbi Shimon Shita that he's doing away with what? With the four avodas. And now we have a statement, Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Loz Hamahalich b'makom shu tzarich lahalich machshava peselis. If he goes a way that he has to go, then machshava pasels. B'makom shein tzarich lahalich in machshavas pasels. And we'll see Bez Hashem what this means when we do what, as Rashi says, when we farish in the Gemara. Okay, in the Mishnah clearly we said, guys, a Kabbalah shaloi lishma pasels. Okay, a Kabbalah shaloi lishma pasels. Now let's speak about the concept of pigul. Pigul is you have in mind doing one of the four avodas. You have in mind one of the four avodas, a machshava of chutz lisman. Chutz l'makom is also pigul. There's no karetz. Chutz lisman. So if you shechted to go ahead and eat the meat, right, or sprinkle the dam, the key being is that in the action of the zrika, it has to be a form of achila. There's two possible achilas: achilas mizbeach and achilas adam. So therefore, if I would shecht on the condition to eat it the next day, right, the chutz lisman, that would be pigul because my machshava was on what? On achila. If I would go ahead and have machshava to go ahead and sprinkle it the next day, that would be a machshava of pigul because I'm burning what? The mizbeach eats the blood. Good. What about if I'm a kabel? I'm a kabel the dam, I'll menas to go ahead and do the srika the next day or eat the carbon the next day. That's the chayra that would be predicated upon our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that what? That an avoida shaloi lishma, even Kabbalah, would passel the carbon. So right now we're saying shaloi lishma and pigul in the four avodas are simultaneous. With that in mind, that's how we approach the beginning of this Gemara. The Kabbalah mi pasla. Does Kabbalah really passel? For Hatanya, we have a pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'shachar is ben abakal l'fnei Hashem." They shechta, you should shechta ben bakal fnei Hashem. The grivu bnei Aaron hakahanim, and the Aaron bnei Aaron should bring the blood close. V'zarku es adam. The grivu is mashma, the lashon of what? Of hoilacha. You're bringing close. But as we saw earlier in the parak, it does not mean hoilacha. It means kabbalah. And as we saw earlier in the parak, therefore hoilacha is bechlal kabbalah. That halacha is bechlal kabbalah. But Tanya, v'krivu zu kabbalah sadam. The lashon of v'krivu means you're bringing the dam close to the mizbeh. You're going ahead and you makabel the dam. Ata oimer kabbalah sadam o'eine elas rika. Maybe v'krivu means you're sprinkling it. Kishu oimer, when it says at the end of the pasuk v'zarku, it says v'zarku es adam. So when it says v'zarku haris rika omar, so the action of v'zrika is stated openly. So if it's stated openly, what's v'krivu? Hamani Mekayim Bekrivu Zu Kabbalah Sadam. Now the pasuk says in addition, Bekrivu b'nei Aaron hakohanim shetehei b'koyin, that the Kabbalah should be done with a koyin. Guys, shchita is kosher bizarre, right? Shchita is kosher with a non-koyin. So therefore, it's necessary to tell me Kabbalah must be a koyin. Kabbalah must be a koyin because shchita is kosher bizarre. Hakahanim, they should be in the state of kahuna, klishares, meaning they should be wearing the big day kahuna. Look at Rashi right before it gets wide, the thin line. Shahoyu milubashim big day kahuna. When it says klishares, it does not only mean you're makabel in a klishares, it means hakahanim. They have to be the kahanim mashma bekahunam. The lashim b'nei Aaron kahanim, bekahanim, they should be bekehunam. They should be in the state of what? Of priesthood. Behind big day kahuna. The big day kahuna kama. This is a rule. Anytime it says bikoyin and it's any size, it says a koyin kasha, a koyin kasha. It means what in the big day kahuna. Okay, so far we have the pasuk darshaning kabbalah sadam and with a koyin and we're in the big day kahuna. Amar Rabbi Akiva, says Rabbi Akiva, minayin lekabbalah. How do you know Kabbalah? Shleitahei ela b'koyin kosher ubekli shares. That a koyin kosher and bekli shares. Nemer kam b'nei Aaron. It says over here the grivu b'nei Aaron. It says b'nei Aaron. Nemer lahalan. It says ela shemos b'nei Aaron akahanim hamushachim. It says these are shemos b'nei Aaron akahanim hamushachim. Ma lahalan b'koyin kosher bekli shares. Therefore, it's later on we know it's speaking b'koyin kosher bekli shares. Afkan. Here as well, when it says Bnei Aaron, it's speaking B'kli Kares. Okay, so far, all basically we've seen from the pasuk is B'krivu means Kabbalah Sadam. In addition, we're seeing that Kabbalah has to be Ayudea Kosher Koyin, wearing what? The Big Day Kahuna. Okay, now, gets interesting. Rab Tarfin, says Rab Tarfin, Ekapech es banai, I should bury my son, in Lo Shamati lahafkin hefesh ben Kabbalah Lizrika. So he had found Reb Tarfin had known once upon a time there was a difference in Kabbalah's halacha between Kabbalah and Zrika, but he'd forgotten it, and he expressed this lashon. The kabech, as we had this lashon before, it's difficult to explain. That not that he wants to bury his son, but he expressed it in such a strong way. Mainly the farish, I have no explanation. So again, guys, we're leading to a kasha. Just the you said from our Mishnah, Kabbalah of Shaloi Lishma, apostles, right? That Kabbalah is an avoided apostles. We're going to question that now. So I'm Rabbi Akiva. Ani Faresh, says Rabbi Akiva to Rav Tarfin, I'll explain it. Kabbalah loy osaba machshava kemaisa. By Kabbalah, we will not go ahead and make the machshava kemaisa. We won't make by Kabbalah the machshava kemaisa. And this is where what the question is going to come from. If you're not going to make Kabbalah machshava like a maisa, so Mela Kabbalah should not go ahead and passel. Right? That's again, these words, underline these words. If you're not making the Kabbalah, the machshava like a maisa, if you're not making the maisa, so therefore I don't view the shaloi lishma as done as a result of the Kabbalah. Good, very good. Zrika, however, by Zrika, asaba machshava kamaisa, le'inyan Zrika, we will. Here's your kasha. Kiblu bachutz, Here's an extension. Another din. Kabbalah b'chutz ein chayiv karis. If a zor is makabel b'chutz, you're not chayiv karis. Zorku b'chutz, however you do zrika b'chutz is einish karis. Okay, just to reiterate halacha I told you before, in order for a zor to be mechayiv misa, it has to be the final avodah. Is it possible to keep him quiet? It has to be a final avoida. It has to be a final avoida. So if it's zerika, which is a final avoida, that's going to go ahead and have a chiyuv. That's going to have a chiyuv if it's a final avoida. Kabbalah, which is not a final avoida, will not. Kabbalah, which is not a final avoida, will not. Okay. This again, just as a long-winded brisa, but you already know the kasha because I preface you with the kasha. You see, Kabbalah leyasa machshava kemaisa. Now, kiblu psulim. If a puzzle is ein chayiv olav, if a coin that's puzzle, he's not going to be chayiv. Zarku psulim. If psulim a coin that's puzzle does zrika, chayav olav. They will be chayiv because it's an avodah tama. So Rabbi Akiva has explained to Rabbi Tarfin the difference between Kabbalah and Zrika. That Kabbalah is not a fine carb, is not the end. Therefore, the Inyan Zorus and passing the avoider with a coin that's puzzle, it won't. In addition, what we need is the first statement, we won't make Kabbalah machshava kemaisa. We won't make, if that's the case, if you're not going to make it machshava kemaisa by the first thing, memela, then what? It would not. Pasha says by lishma it would not passel. By lishma it would not passel. Amaloi Rabbi Tarfin said Rabbi Tarfin ha'avoida a lashon of shvua ad hatisa yomin small anishamati ve'li nefarish echad doirish umaskin lishmua b'lashon hazeh. Okay, so that's what he said. And Amaloi Akiva kol parish memcha keparish mechayev. Anyone beautiful lashon Rabbi Akiva, anyone who separates me was separating from life. The bottom line, guys, is with this long-winded statement, what's the kasha? You see, Kabbalah, we don't make the machshava kemaisam and mela. Why in our Mishnah when it says Kabbalah? Shaloi lishma apostles. Over here we say Kabbalah l'chayr wouldn't. Amarava kasha kan b'machshavas pasol. Right. When will we say the Kabbalah one pasol? That's by pigel. The Kabbalah, if you may have the Kabbalah of a pigel, then it won't pasol. So then that's the machshava shaloi lishma. So the machshava of pigel. If you look at Rashi, it simply says machshavas pigel chutz lizmanoi lepasla b'kabbalah. If you have the Kabbalah of chutz lizman during pigel, a machshava of pigel during Kabbalah, guys, it's not going to passel. If you have the machshava of shaloi lishma during pigel during a Kabbalah, it will. What was our Mishnah speaking about? Our Mishnah was speaking about Shaloi Lishma. Rabbi Akiva was speaking about what? Pigel. So the kasha is not kasha. Again, our Mishnah, what? Our Mishnah was discussing what? Shaloi Lishma. Right? Our Mishnah was discussing Shaloi Lishma. Shaloi Lishma Kabbalah would be. You're asking a kasha from Rabbi Akiva's interpretation to Rabbi Tarfin, the Kabbalah of Machshav won't be Lamaisa, that's Linyan Pigel. But in the Shema it would be, and that would answer the question. Says the Gemara, Dekanami, it's Meduyik also, the Tani, Shezevach Nifsel, V'lei Tani Mispagel. Guys, look back at the Mishnah. Look back at the Mishnah, about 5-6 lines down. Shezevach Nifsel, Ba'bar Devarim. The Zevach Nifsel becomes puzzle 4 ways. Puzzle means what? Shaloi lishma. It's not a good. It's right. If it's going to be a chatos, it's shaloi lishma. It doesn't say that the zevach would become pigel, guys. It doesn't say the zevach mispagel. You know what mispagel means? That if you eat it, you chayiv kares. What pigel does, fellas, is the korban becomes a cheftz of kares. It's like noiser. It's din in the meat. It doesn't say that. It says puzzle. It does say mispagel. So it's meduyik that our Mishnah is discussing Shloi Lishma, and only Shloi Lishma, and not pigel. And that would be the answer to the question. We're good? Everyone's good, right? Baruch Hashem. Machshavas pigel like pasla b'kabbalah. Fred the Gemara, yes, say the machshava pigel won't pasla b'kabbalah. Iva Tanya Yachal, I might think, like hey machshavas ma'eles elebizrika. I might think that what? That machshava is ma'el, only le'inyan zrika bilvad, meaning to create pigel, it was only in zrika. Minayin l'rabbi shchita v'kabbalah. How do I know to include that shchita v'kabbalah could create pigel? And the kasha is going to be from Kabbalah. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, "Dim hey ochel ye ochel sar zevach shlomav." And if you eat from the bas zevach shlomav b'yom hashlishi lo yiratzeh. Right? It says lo yiratzeh. So pigel hu lo yiratzeh. That's speaking about something that's going to bring it to being eaten. I might think that even if you shecht al menas to do sprinkling to al menas to go ahead, and I might think that included in this would be if you go ahead again, if you have in mind to do the shvicha shirayim or burning the emurim chutz lezman. No, it means if you do shvicha shirayim. In other words, I'm sorry. This is what I want to make sure. I know when I pour the shirayim of the blood down on the side of the mizbeach. Let's say I have in mind to eat the meat the next day. When I'm burning the emurim, let's say I'm burning the emurim, I'm asked to eat the meat the next day. So I might think just like, what brings the meat to be eaten? The avodah. You can't eat the meat until the avodah sadam is done. So what are we learning from over here? That Kabbalah, which is one of the things that will bring us closer to the meat being eaten, that wouldn't bring you to pigel. That's the kasha. But again, now so I gave you the kasha. Let's the context we're saying over here. What about if you're telling me it's anything that's bringing to be eaten? Shvicha shirayim. I go ahead and I put that in order to eat the meat next day. I burn the parts that go to Hashem, the emurim. I'm going to ask to eat it the next day. I might think that also would create pigel. That's what the Gemara is saying right now. Okay. Talmud Loimar, Bayom Ashlishi lo yeratzeh, and the third day lo yeratzeh. Lo yeratzeh means what? Zrika. Hamakar vaysoy lo yechashev, and the one who brings it should not literally be considered. Zrika b'chal haisa. Zrika was b'chal of the avodas. Lama yatzasa lahaka shalei aloim lecha. Mazrikam yuched ashi avoda uma keves kapara. Avkol avoda uma keves kapara. Yatz shvichas shirayim aktoris emurim sheim ma'akvin es hakapara. Okay, I'll explain to what I just said. Here's the kasha, and then I'll explain the Gemara. In our dialogue, we said Rabbi Akiva was speaking about the Kabbalah of Pigel, that the Kabbalah of Pigel will not create in Kabbalah, if I'm a Kabbal the Dam, I'm menasta do the Zrika the next day, or eat the meat the next day, that won't create Pigel. We're questioning that fact. Why are we questioning from? Based upon a pasuk. What does the pasuk say? If you eat, this is the pasuk of Pigel. The me'ochel yochem b'saz zevach shlomav, it's by a shlomim. B'yom hashlishi lo yiratzeh. Yiratzeh means zrika, guys. Hamakar b'soy lo yichashev lo Pigel yeh v'nefesh acheles mimenu avoyna tisa. Now, when it says lo yachal, it means the only thing that will bring Pigel is something that brings you to eat. Let's go through the process of the carbon. Here's the carbon. He does the shchita, he does the kabbalah, he does the lacha, he does the srika. He pours the blood down the chute of the yisaid. He burns the imurim, and then he eats the carbon. Good. So now you're telling me pigel can only be in these four. What about the latter two? What about the pouring down the yisaid and burning the imurim? After all these will precede the achila. And if the machshava, so if my machshava in this is to do this to eat tomorrow, or this to eat tomorrow, it should be pigel. Talmud loima lo yeratzeh. Why does it say lo yeratzeh, which is zrika? Hu adin shchita kabbalah v'lacha. It's telling you, just like zrika is something that is ma'akiv the kapara. If you don't do it, it's not a good carbon. What happens if you don't go ahead, guys, and throw it down the chute? What happens if you don't do the emurim? Is it still a good carbon? Yeah, because you know by now what's the carbon? It's the four avoidus adam. Memela lo yiratza tells me these two are not a problem. If I do one of these two with the machshava of eating the meat the next day, it's not going to go ahead and affect anything. The bottom line, after all is said and done, we got a kasha because we have Kabbalah as one of their four avoidus that would create pigul. We just had a brisa that says it doesn't. How are we doing, guys? We're good? We're good? Okay. So now we're on the Amid base. Ella loy kasha. Ella, it's not shver. Loy kasha. Hada ama hareini shoichet al menas lekabel dama lemachar. I'm shechting it on the condition to be makabel the blood the next day. Hada ama hareini makabel dama al menas lishpech shirayim lemachar. Okay. In the first case, it's going to create pigul. In the second case, it will not. Look at Rashi. Loy kasha, hod de kamar be shvicha shirayim kigoin, the ama hareni zoirik oy achas mishara voidois, almanas lishbech shirayim l'machar, shari chishev lachilas mizbeach chutz l'zmanoi. V'hod de mamtinu le'el kigoin, the ama hareni shefech shirayim, kol de milsa, bina machshava b'shas avoida, al dover achilas adam, oy l'mizbeach, hilkach. Chishev b'shas shvicha shirayim, if you thought about b'shas shvicha shirayim al achilas b'sar like klumhu lihavi machshava b'shas avoida. It wasn't machshava b'shas avoida. So therefore, that we said yishech al menasti makabel the dam. This thing of this is right. When you go ahead and shech al menas lekabel dam lemachar, this is a machshava that's not mafagel because you're not. Kabbalah has nothing to do with achilas mizbeach. Guys, I think I said it wrong the first time. Listen well. In order to be pigul, you need one or two things. Achilas adam, achilas mizbeach. If I shech to makabel the dam, there's no achilas mizbeach over there. So that's what it means that the Kabbalah is not, that's what Rabbi Akiva meant. The Kabbalah, we're not going to make machshava l'maisa. A machshava in the Kabbalah, b'shas shchita, will not create pigul, because being mekabel dam is not achilas mizbeach. So that harini shoichin al menas the kabel dama lemachar, no, that's not pigul. Hada amar harini mekabel dama al menas lishbech shirayim lemachar, I'm being mekabel the dam now on the condition to go ahead and pour the shirayim lemachar. That would be a machshava of pigul. Because when you did a Kabbalah, you were thinking about achilas mizbeach, and shvichas damim is considered achilas mizbeach. So that would be pigul. That would be pigul, and that would answer the question. Amayu Rabbanan l'Rava says one of the Chachamim to Rava. Ushvicha shrayim v'aktoras emurim loy pasla b'hu machshava. If you have machshava, b'shas one of those two places to eat the meat the next day. But Tanan, Yachal, I would think, loy tei machshava may eles. El b'achilas basar, minayin l'rabbi shvicha shirayim v'aktoras emurim, tamad loymar, v'me'achal yachal, right, b'shtei achilas l'kos medaber, achas achilas adam, v'achas achilas mizbeach. So l'chera, shirayim is achilas mizbeach, should be pigel. Says Moy Kasha, Hadam Harini Zorik al Manas Lishbach Shirayim Lemachar, Hadam Harini Shafech Shirayim al Manas Lahakter Emurim Lemachar. The difference would be, right, if I say I'm going ahead and doing this Rika on condition to throw the dam down or burn it the next day, so you're thinking B'shas and Avoida on the Mizbeach, right? That would be Chutz L'Zman. Guess what am I doing? I'm doing a Zrika to pour the dam. So l'chayra, you have a chilas mizbeach. That would be pigul. Where the brisa that said shvicha shrayim is not pigul. Dama harini shafech shrayim al menas lahakter emurim l'machar. So that's one of the four. That's not one of the four avodas, right? You can't do it. In other words, I can have in mind shvicha shrayim as a problem. I can't have in mind b'shas shvicha shrayim to create a problem. In one of the four avodas, if I have in mind shvicha shirayim, it can create pigul, because shvicha shirayim is for the mizbeach eating. Mashen came b'shas doing. After I finish the four avodas and I go ahead b'shas shvicha shirayim, I have in mind that won't create pigul. Rav Yehuda Bereid Rav Chia Shamati. I heard shetfilas etzba mifageles bechatas pinimius. Okay. There's a chatas. There's par helam davar, par koy Mashiach, par Yom Kippur. These are considered chatas pinimius. No blood is sprinkled on mizbeach achitzain. We daub blood on the inside mizbeach, and we also sprinkle in front of the proiches. Right, we sprinkle in front of the proiches. This is the din of what of the. So now your toivel. The putting your finger in the blood, guys, and taking it out is similar to hilacha. You don't have the four avodas adam over here, guys. You're taking the kli, you're taking the blood inside, you're being toivel. So the question is, this act of tefillah that I'm doing right now, I'm bringing it to the mizbeach. Look, watch. Here's your mizbeach. I'm going ahead, I'm taking the blood, I'm going like this, being toivel. Is that an act of halacha or not? If it is, then you can have a problem of pigul. So says Rabbi Yehuda Bereid Rav Chia Shamati shetfilas etzba b'mefageles b'chatas pinimius, that it can create a machshav of pigul in the chatas pinimius. Okay, that's what I heard. That's what he says. That's what I heard. So Shama Ilfa, right? Amra Kamei de Rav Papa. Let me see who this is. The Ilfa, Shema Ilfa heard this, and Amr Kamei de Rav Pada, and he said in front of Rav Pada, this halacha, that the tefillah of the etzba in the could create pigul. So Amar Rav Pada said, Klum lamadnu pigul ela mishlamim. What's the source of pigul? The shlamim, as we just saw in Hachal Yachal, besides Zemach Shlama, we saw in the Amin Aleph. So mashlamim ain't tefillah etzba mifagelis behen. By the shlamim, the act of sticking your finger in the blood is not mafagel. Af chatos ain't tefillas etzva mifagelis behen. So too chatos, the tefillah can't do. In other words, I don't have any dimyan to tefillah by shlamim. So if I don't have it by shlamim, I can't have it by. So Rapada is telling Ilfa that you heard can't be true, because I don't have the dimyan of pigul in the realm of pigul, which is created by the carbon shlamim. It doesn't exist tefillah. So the chiyakol mishlamim lamadnu. Fred the Gemara that we learn everything from shlamim. Im shlamim shaloi lishma ein moitzi midei pigul. Okay, this I have to. Hey guys, this is Kachim 101. In order for pigul to be pigul, it's got to be the only game in town. In order for pigul to be pigul, it's got to be the only game in town. So, for example, if I do shchita al menas to go ahead and eat the meat the next day, and then I do the kabbalah al menas to go ahead and burn the imurim the next day, it's not pigul. It's got to be or machshava shaloi lishma. I'm going to do kabbalah shaloi lishma. It has to be the only issue you did was pigul, nothing else. In other words, it has to be the only thing wrong was the fact that I did pigul and nothing else. The only thing I did wrong was pigul and nothing else. Good? If I have an other machshava, it's going to mess it up. So now we have a shaila like this. Let's say you go ahead, it's a shlamim. In the shchita you have a machshava pigul, and then in one of the four avodas you have a machshava shaloi lishma. Is that going to mess it up or not? That's the shaila at hand. Is that going to mess it up or not? Okay? Says the Gemara. You want to learn out. You want to learn out from you want to say tefillah should not be a din of tefillah should not be mispagel the carbon by the chatas pinimius, since it doesn't exist in the realm of shlamim. Imash shlamim shaloi lishma a moitzi midei pigul. If I'd have machshava of pigul and then a machshava shaloi lishma, it would not ruin the pigul. It would be pigul. Av chatas shaloi lishma, you'd say also chatas shaloi lishma a moitzi midei pigul. So let's say it's a carbon chatas. I have machshava pigul in the shchita. then I have machshava of shaloi lishma in the Kabbalah or the halacha with this rika. So by shlamim it won't mess it up. So you're going to say, therefore, if you learn everything out from shlamim, chatas also should mess it up. And the answer is, but we know that by chatas it does mess it up. It comes what from a ribui of the pasuk, right? We can learn our pigel from what from an extra pasuk. Hachanami regarding tefillah ribui the krakasi. So you want to say halacha like this. You want to say that the tefillah of the finger, and we'll get to the ribui soon, that the tefillah, putting it on the corner is going to create pigel. That's what you want to say. Says Rapada, how could you say that? You learn from shlamim, right? You learn from shlamim, and if you learn from shlamim, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in that realm. Since it doesn't exist in that realm, then what? Then it can't make pigel. We taught to him, to Rapada, 1 second. If you're going to say you learn everything out from shlamim, then I have a problem. What's my problem? Again, in pigel, the idea is the only game in town to create pigel is that can only be pigel. Let's say I would go ahead, and after I do pigel, I have a machshava of shaloi lishma by shlamim. Because the shaloi lishma shlamim passel the carbon, so therefore it's not going to passel the pigel. So therefore it's still a good carbon. But if you're going to learn out chatas from shlamim, then chatas also shouldn't passel the pigel. It shouldn't mess up the pigel. And it does. Ella, you have to conclude that it's not a carte statement, we learn everything out from shlamim, but there's a ribui to include that a chatas messes up the carbon if it's shaloi lishma, who I didn't have a ribui to tell me that if I toivel my finger by a chatas inside chatas, it's also mispagal. That's where we're holding right now. That it's also mispagal. Hachanami, maybe buyi, the kroa koasi, that is mispagal. We have the exact same Gemara. I'm Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Ba'aliyah. They've been learning in an attic. Zu shamati shetfilas etzba mifageles. That by a chatas panimius, putting your finger in is misfageles. So Toiva Reb Shim ben Lakish was wondering, klum lamnu pignol ela mishlamim. What's that source of pigel? From the carbon shlamim. Mash shlamim ain't tefila be'etzba mifageles behen, because there is no tefila. Af chatas ain't tefillas be'etzba mifageles behen. Fred the Gemara v'chia kol mishlamim lamdu. You learn everything from shlamim. Ima shlamim shaloi lishman ein moitzi midei pigel. If you had a machshava of pigel and then consequently a machshava of shaloi lishma, the pigel is still intact. Avchatas shaloi lishma ein moitzi midei pigel, and we know in fact indeed it does. So on Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina in hakol mishlamim lamdu. Taka we learn out from shlamim. So if we learn out from shlamim, then why does chatas pasel and shlamim not? Hoyel b'chutzlim koimei pasel b'shlamim. Since if you have machshava shaloi lishma, shaloi mim koimei, it's going to pass by shlamim. That's pigel, but not a chiyuv kares, guys. Right? Ushaloi lishma pasel b'chatas, and shaloi lishma patas by chatas. So machutzlim koimei a pasel b'shlamim moitzi midei pigel. Av shaloi lishma pasel b'chatas moitzi midei pigel. So comes along Rabbi Yosef Yehud Bechini wants to say the following: I have a limud to teach me that shaloi lishma by chatas after the pigel passes the carbon. Why? Because shaloi lishma by chatas is different than the shaloi lishma by shlamim. By shlamim, shaloi lishma does not passel. Shaloi bim kaimei does. By chatas, shaloi bim kaimei passels and shaloi lishma passels. So just like, guys, the following: if I'd have a machshava of shaloi lishma, if I would have a machshava that would passel, mess up. Let's say I had a just want to check one thing, fellas, before. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, guys, let's say the following: I shecht a carbon shlamim. I'll manas to go ahead and eat the meat the next day. Is that pigel? Say yes. That's chutz l'zman. Good. I'm a kabel the dam to go ahead. I'm a kabel the dam to do the zrika shleibim kaima. would that mess up the pigel? Say yes. Good. So just like Shaloi bim Koimai by Shlomim messes up the pigel, because Shaloi bim Koimai is a puzzle dikal machshava, Shaloi lishmoi by Chatos also mess up the pigel. What was your kasha? What was your kasha? If you're going to learn out Shlomim from Chatos from Shlomim, Linyan Pigel, it should have the same halacha. We know by Shlomim, if you have Pigel and then Shaloi Lishmoi, it doesn't passel. Then you should say that what? That you should say that Chatos should not passel. After Shaloi Lishmoi shouldn't passel. So we said, Ein Chinami, we know it does passel. The first teretz was, we have a riboy of the pasuk. This teretz is saying, no, we're being consistent. We're still going to learn from Shlomim. But I have a difference over here, and here's the difference. By Shlomim, if I have the machshav of chutz lizman, it's pigel. Then I have a machshav in one of the other avoidus of chutz l'mkaimai, that's not pigel anymore. Hu adin, by chatos, if I have the machshav of pigel, and then the machshav of shaloi l'shmai, just like by Shlomim, shaloi b'mkaimai passes the pigel, so too by chatos, the shaloi l'shmai passes the pigel. That's what we're saying right now. So that was the teretz that Rabbi is coming to go ahead and say. Let's see it in slide one more time. I'm Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina. In Hakol Mishlamim Lamadnu, you're going to learn all of Pigel from Shlamim. Hayel v'chutz l'mkaimai, paisel b'shlamim. The machshav of chutz l'mkaimai will passel b'shlamim. Right? If you had the machshav of Pigel, it's going to mess it up. Ushloi l'shmoi paisel b'chatas. Machutz l'mkaimai a paisel b'shlamim moitzi midei Pigel. It takes it out of Pigel. First you had machshav of chutz l'zman, then you got machshav of chutz l'mkaimai. Af shaloi l'shmoi ha paisel, so too the shloi l'shmoi ha paisel b'chatas moitzi midei Pigel. And therefore, I learn everything from Shlomim, and will be consistent. Shlomim, Shloi l'shmoi won't passel, Chat Shloi l'shmoi will. Amar V'yamia, Mitzida Tavra, the teretz is broken right in the side. Malachutz l'mkoimai ha-paisel b'Shlomim, shkei noig b'chol ha-Zevachim. Tayva b'Shloi l'shmoi, shein noig gel b'pesav Chatas muvad. Guys, Shloi l'shmoi is unique to Chatas and Pesach. Shloi l'mkoimai is universal, so you can't compare the two types of Isurim. You want to say, just like Shaloi l'mkoimai passes by Shlomim, so too Shaloi l'shmoi passes by Pesach, by Chatas, but that's limited to Chatas and Pesach. It's not universal. Elamayis cholemeimar, dava ha-poisel behen moitzi midei pigel. Something that passels will go ahead and be moitzi midei pigel. Dava ha-ma'akev behen meivi'in lidei pigel, and something that's ma'akev will bring it to pigel. We'll see what this means in a second. Hachanami. Davar apoisel ba mitzim they pigel, davar ma'akaba maybe in they pigel. Okay, let's see Rashi. Says Rashi, second wide line. Okay. Third wide line. In Baal Loimer Hakol B'Shlamim Lamdu. If you want to say that we learn that pigel from Shlamim, Ma yesh l'chol l'meimar b'shaloi l'shmoi hamoitzi chatas midei pigel. That Shaloi Lishma will take by Chatas will remove the pigel. Kach yesh l'chaloymar Shlomim davar paisel baha kigoyim chutz l'mkoimai moitzim midei pigel. Something that passels. So by Chatas it's Shaloi Lishma, by Shlomim it's chutz l'mkoimai. However, davar ma'akev boy kigoyim dalar avoidus hadam mevi'in l'dei pigel. Hachanami av Chatas davar paisel baha kigoyim Shaloi Lishma moitzi, but davar ma'akev baha Tfilas etzba, guys, will be considered one of the four avodas. So therefore, it's going to go ahead what and passel. Ma'akev, guys, what does ma'akev mean? It stops the pigel from taking place. Any problem in the avoda stops the pigel from taking place. So now we're gonna let's see it inside, and it's gonna be very geschmack. Let's see it inside. So Rabbi Yomi asks this question, and then he concludes. Why does he say Ella? What? Why do you got to say Dava hapoisel behen? Let's say, for example, by chatas it's shloi l'shma, by shlomim it's chutz l'mkoimai, moitzim dei pigel. It's going to stop the pigel from taking place. Dava hama'akiv, the avoida, that's ma'akiv the kapara. If you don't have the avoidus adam, the kapara is not there anymore. Meivin dei pigel. They'll bring you to pigel. So hachanami, by tefillah of the etzba dava paisel boy the machshava shaloi lishma meitzim they pigel the dava ma'akev boy maybe they pigel. So very geschmack. The tefillah, guys. The you want to know why the tefillah is meitzim they pigel, because tefillah is when it's an avoid, it's ma'akev. If you don't not toivel the dam, it's ma'akev. Amr Rav Mari afananami tinina. He also says that what that by the korban mincha the following avoidus will passel. Now again, why does avoidus by the mincha, guys? We have the kamitza, the putting in the kli, the bringing it over, and the burning. Those are the four avoidus in the menachas. So it says, Amr Yossi Bar Chanina, afanami tinina. I also learned that the tefillas etzba is going to be mefagel. Zeh klal. Kol hakomitz v'noisim b'kli. You bring it and you burn it. Bishlema kaimitz hainu shaykhet. Bishlema doing the kamitza is equivalent, as we saw the other day, to shchita. Moilech bringing it over or bring it over hainu moilech. Makdir burning nami hainu zayrik. Ela noisim bekli ma'ined. What is putting it in the kli? Elaim b'didami l'kabbalah. If you're going to say putting the kli is similar to kabbalah, midami is it comparable? Hasam and mela. There, when you shech the animal, you didn't do anything to put it in the kli. Automatically, gravity put it in the kli. Hacha, when you did the kamitza, iu kushakol v'rami, he put it in. So we want to say that Kabbalah means memela. Kabbalah is not what when you put it in. The Gemara is going to have charata, but right now the Gemara wants to say putting the kamitza in the kli is not the same as what as the dam falling in memela. So what must it be? Since it's not possible to do kamitza without putting it in the kli, it must be an avoid the chashuva. Hachanami by tefillah of the etzba, since the tefillah of the etzba by the chatas penimius, you have to do it. So again, a whole sugi over here is the tefillah of the etzba, is a mefagel or not. We want to say the following: this kamitza is what is shchita. This putting in the kli, l'chayritz avoid the chashuva, but it's not kabbalah. Why is it not kabbalah? Because you're doing it yourself. Bringing it over, that's halacha. Putting it on the mizbeach, burning it is rika. Good. And this putting it in is avoid the chashuva. If this is an avoid the chashuva, so too taking your finger, putting in the blood, it's avoid the chashuva, and therefore what? It creates pigel. That's what we're saying right now. Okay. La'olam dedami l'kabbalah. Says the Gemara, I'll say it's like kabbalah. Now, guys, if it's the Kabbalah, then you don't have a source for what? For tefillah. Again, if I go to here, it's one of the four avoidus, and tefillah is not one of the four avoidus, I don't have a source for tefillah vetzpa. The whole predication of the raya was, this is avodah chashuva, but we don't have a name to it. So mele tefillah also. But once you're telling me that this is with no difference where the blood falls in, or you put it in, it's Kabbalah, I have no source for tefillah. Says Gemara, the difference is since at the end of the day they both end up in the kli. What's the difference? It's a mela mali kashakal v'yoyev. What's the difference? So l'chayra, according to this, you don't have a raya. You don't have a raya. It only would be what in the four avoidus. It won't be in this. And the Gemara will continue tomorrow with this thing.